1 year ago, on September 27, 2020, a new war erupted between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The war was called the Second Karabakh War. The First Karabakh War took place in the early 1990s when Armenia invaded and ethnically cleansed nearly 1/5 of Azerbaijan's territory, expelling almost 800,000 Azerbaijanis and keeping the occupied areas under its control for almost 30 years. This time, Azerbaijan managed to set back all the gains Armenia made during 6 years of the First War. They did so within only 44 days of war last fall. Azerbaijan liberated large swaths of the occupied territory, which compelled Armenia to sign a capitulation act and withdraw from remaining 3 Azerbaijan districts. What lessons can be learned from the Second Karabakh War? Lesson number 1, strike the iron while it's hot. Armenia had 30 long years at its disposal to negotiate a peace deal with Azerbaijan. Armenia failed to use the opportunity, neither during the 1990s, when Azerbaijan was in a much weaker position, nor later during those 30 years. Armenia didn't give up a square inch of occupied territory. Keeping in mind that they expelled more than 800,000 Azerbaijanis from the occupied territories, somehow Armenia's leaders believed that Azerbaijan would forget about the Karabakh and the 800,000 forcibly displaced Azerbaijanis, and that young Azerbaijanis would consider partying in discos more important than regaining national territory. Armenia was also extremely confident that in case of another war, its sponsor and patron, Russia, would step in and help militarily as it did with troops in the early 1990s. Armenia was also certain that the large, wealthy, and politically well-connected Armenian diaspora living in the US and Europe would be able to pressure and stop Azerbaijan through Western government policies and pressures. Had it decided to engage Armenia in battle, the diaspora said help was coming. None of this materialized. Russia declared from the very beginning that the war was happening within Azerbaijan's sovereign borders and Armenia was not directly under attack. Hence, the provisions of mutual assistance of the Russian-led anti-NATO bloc called CSTO, to which Armenia also belongs, did not apply here. Yes, throughout the 44 days of war, plane loads of Russian weapons and equipment were delivered to Armenia, but that did not help Armenians much. As for the Armenian diaspora, during the entirety of the 44-day war, 8 million Armenians living around the world raised only $170 million to send to Armenia. Considering that each day of the war cost Armenia around $30 million, this entire fund raised by the Armenian diaspora covered the cost of less than 6 days of the 44-day-long war. Although some Western politicians, like the President Macron of France, took a very pro-Armenian stance thanks to their connections to the Armenian lobby, none of this went beyond the mere political statements that were made. All talk. Lesson number 2. If you want peace, prepare for war. That lesson Azerbaijan learned very well and has been strengthening its military since its economy was modernized and economic solvency was attained. It built up its army to 125,000 full-time soldiers, with 330,000 trained reservists and 15,000 internal troops. The country also acquired modern weapons and technologies. Azerbaijan also paid a particular attention to its special forces, continuously training them to the highest standards, turning them into superior combat soldiers, as are their American equivalent fighters in units like the Army Rangers, Special Forces, SEAL Team 6, and Marine Raiders. The Azerbaijani Special Forces played a tremendous role in the outcome of the 44-day war, the culmination of which was the liberation of the city of Shusha. Which brings me to the third lesson. Lesson number 3. Drones and the future of warfare. The modern, well-trained Azerbaijan army's blitzkrieg lightning war was accomplished by using modern technology, including primarily Turkish Bayraktar drones and Israeli Harop kamikaze drones that were critical in demolishing Russian-made tanks, artillery, and armored personnel carriers, as well as very expensive S-300 anti-missile systems. Tanks and armored personnel carriers cannot protect themselves from drones because they come from above. Most armored vehicles and tanks are heavily armored from line-of-sight attacks, but are not armored on top where drone-fired missiles hit them. The use of the drone's technology allowed Azerbaijan to quickly eliminate the 30-year-long heavy military fortifications Armenia had built in the occupied areas. These weapons, with precision technology, shorten the length of the war and minimize to the maximum possible the number of losses among soldiers on both sides. However, the Second Karabakh War showed that without well-trained ground forces, boots on the ground, and strategic military planning, cohesion, and leadership, a success even in modern warfare cannot be guaranteed. This was clearly demonstrated in the Battle of Shusha, a strategically located hilltop city in Karabakh, which has a high spiritual value for all Azerbaijanis, as it's considered a cradle of Azerbaijani music and culture. No wonder that one day after the liberation of Shusha, Armenia surrendered and the war was lost for her. The legendary Battle of Shusha is now being studied by the most preeminent military schools of the world, including the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. A meticulous study by West Point scholars makes clear that drones played no role in the Battle of Shusha, simply because during those days the weather was foggy and there was no way any drone could effectively operate. It was thanks to 400 Azerbaijani special forces carrying light arms, rifles, and RPG missiles, little water and food, and marching through forests for many days without being detected, and then scaling the cliffs of impenetrable Shusha, that the city was liberated from 2,000 well-armed Armenian defenders. So no matter how effective your drones are, ground forces, boots on the ground, will remain essential in future warfare. Lesson number 4. International law will protect you as long as you are strong and you win, period. Modern international law was established after World War II by great powers who wanted to avoid World War III and make the acquisition of territory by force completely illegal. However, soon the politics got in the way and the principle of territorial integrity of states got more and more violated, including by great powers themselves. And these powers, who themselves created the whole international legal system, did nothing to rectify the situation and seriously punish the violations. The same happened in Karabakh. When Armenia invaded and ethnically cleansed Azerbaijan territory, the UN Security Council condemned Armenia with 4 separate resolutions. International law was on the side of Azerbaijan. The entire world recognized Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, but all that did not help Azerbaijan to peacefully return to its territories. So Azerbaijan strengthened its military while pursuing active diplomacy, preventing Armenia's attempts to legitimize and legalize the occupation. Lesson number 5. Build your alliances, be good diplomats. We should all remember that Azerbaijan is in a very tough neighborhood. It's the world's only country bordering both Russia and Iran. Russia and Iran have been quite helpful to Armenia against Azerbaijan, supporting Armenia militarily and economically all these 30 years since the First War. So naturally, after the ceasefire in 1994, Azerbaijan started building alliances with countries like Turkey, Israel, Pakistan, and strong partnerships with the United States, the United Kingdom, and other Western nations. Nevertheless, Azerbaijan never allowed itself to be turned into a battleground of great powers. Despite strong relations with Israel, Azerbaijan tried to have normal, good neighborly relations with Iran. And despite a strong partnership with the US and Europe, Azerbaijan-Russia relations also normalized and developed. Thus, both regionally and internationally, Azerbaijan's positions got stronger over the last 30 years. The relations with various third world countries were also of great importance. Azerbaijan currently holds the presidency of the Non-Aligned Movement, which is the world's second largest international organization after the United Nations, with 120 member countries. While some forces tried several times last September and October to get the UN Security Council to pass a statement or resolution against Azerbaijan during the war, it was namely the members of the Non-Aligned Movement, with which Azerbaijan had built strong partnerships, that prevented the Council from passing such anti-Azerbaijani documents. Lesson number 6. Don't relax once victorious. Armenia relaxed once victorious and lost all the gains it made during 6 years of the First War within 44 days of the Second. Now it's time for Azerbaijan not to relax. Apparently, Azerbaijan has learned the lesson well. It's shown by large-scale reconstruction in the liberated areas and strengthening of military positions across all the liberated territories, including the border with Armenia and Iran. Hundreds of kilometers of new roads, highways, and international airports are being built, along with schools and residences for people waiting to return to their homes, waiting for 30 years. Water sources are being created or reconstructed so farmers can farm again. A new airport at Fuzuli is open for jet airliners, and 2 more are being built in Zangilan and Lachen. Demining engineers and soldiers are clearing 30 years of minefields laid by Armenian forces. So, these are the 6 important lessons from the Second Karabakh War. Hopefully, learning these lessons and drawing the right conclusions will remove the possibility for a third Karabakh War. This is Raul Lowry Contreras. Subscribe to this channel and you will be updated whenever there is a new episode of the Contreras Report. You can also send me an email with your questions and I promise to respond. The email address will appear on the screen in a few seconds. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.